Tonight we are talking about the Jesuits, who are the earth beast of Revelation. And the earth beast is known as, through history, it's been known as the false prophet. So you can kind of connect those things. And, to back up, I mean, when I first started, looking into prophecy, and I followed some SDA people who, well, they're the only historicist teachers, so I kind of had to follow them. Most of them, and I think it's Walter Veith, and I forget their other top guy, but I'll say that the Jesuits are, America is the earth beast. And that's really the track, I took. So, now people tell me, about prophecy, they go, well, that's your interpretation, but, you should be open to other opinions. And I'm here to tell you I am. But I know what I know, and so you got to prove what I think. You have to prove something different, and you have to prove it with Scripture, right? And this is one of those things that I thought I knew it was America, because you look at America, what is a beast kingdom? A beast kingdom is a reigning kingdom. It's the most powerful kingdom in the world. Well, America, is the most powerful. America, financially, through our economy, through our military, we are the most powerful. So it seems like it's a good fit. And as we go through the verse-by-verse explanation, you'll kind of see how it seems to be a good fit. But you have to be teachable. And as I did the studies on Daniel, and you see what the image of Daniel is saying in Daniel 2, or as the statue, and it tells you that there's, in the end times, when Messiah returns, there's going to be an uncut stone, and that's going to be cast down at the feet of iron and clay. Well, the iron represents Rome. And so we know right there it's telling us that in times when Messiah returns, Rome is going to be still in power, as it was in the iron legs. So we know it's Rome. And then through the studies that I had gone through, I discovered that the clay is the Muslims, which you can see through history, the interaction of the Roman Catholic Church and the Muslims. So you can see the iron clay feet, and Messiah will come back and destroy those two who oppose him and the followers of Messiah. So we know that to be true, but that's something I had to learn, and I am teachable, but I'm confident in the Jesuits being it for a lot of reasons. And just like last time we went through the Antichrist beast, and you can see proof after proof after proof, whether it's verse by verse. You can see the proof in the trumpets as far as empowering Islam. You can see the proof in the little horn of Daniel 7, the son of perdition of 2 Thessalonians. So you have all these different proofs pointing to one people group, and it's the same way with the Jesuits. So we'll go through like the verse-by-verse explanation, and you'll see it. And then you'll see prophetic explanations from others that'll point to them. You can see how the Jesuits have carried out the bowls of Revelation. So there's another proof that you see their interaction and their control. And then we'll see how the Jesuits control America. So if you start off on the graphic, can you guys see the screen and see the graphic okay?
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, so on the base layer, as always, Roman Empire, Roman Catholic Church, and then in 1798, the popes of Rome got taken captive by Napoleon's army, took him prisoner where he later died. And so that ended the 1,260 years of reign of the popes. Doesn't mean they disappeared. Doesn't mean they went totally away. It just means they stopped being the reigning power. And the earth beast took control. So when you read Revelation 13, it talks about the sea beast reigned for 1,260 years, and then rose another beast, the earth beast, which is the reigning power. So it's telling you there that, it's telling you the story of the Jesuits who took power in 1798 of the Vatican because the popes had taken away their power. So back here in 1793, the King of France got the Pope to remove the power of the Jesuits, remove their funding, remove whatever, their power, their authority, and so the Jesuits were seeking revenge. And so part of that revenge, as we went through a couple weeks ago when we went through the overview study, you see that they poured out the sword of atheism on France, which just caused them to fall into all sorts of despair. Because why were they doing that? Because France, the King of France, was the one who had told the Pope to remove their power. And then they caused the French Revolution, where the blood flowed through the streets of the great cities and then through the rural areas. And then they had the bloody Napoleonic Wars. So now more blood's being poured out on Spain and other countries which had banned the Jesuits. And then there's the cutoff point right there is on the seat of the beast, the Pope was captured in 1798 and lost power. So that's the cutoff point right here. So right there you can see the interaction of the Jesuits casting down judgment out of vengeance, but in all reality it's a fulfillment of prophecy. So they're just carrying out the directive of Messiah who controls everything. So does that make sense where we're at right here?
Yeah.
And you see
I like that tie-in.
It's not.
I didn't never tie those two together like that. That's pretty interesting.
Well, I won't. There's okay. So I'll just cover this real briefly. Here's how I see things always playing out. Elohim tends to use one pagan empire to judge another one, but then he always judges that empire, right? So you saw that with the Assyrians, the Babylonians, Medo-Persia, Greece, right? Rome, and I don't have the proof on this yet, but when you look at this narrative right here and you see what's going on, these popes of Rome, just like John said, the spirit of Antichrist is amongst us right now. And the Roman bishops were coming into power in the first century, second century, third century, right? So they're rising to power already, and they're already wanting to take control, but they can't because the restrainer is in place, and that's the Roman emperor. So you look at all this being played out. Then right here, Seal 6, it's divided, and after that, Constantine, there was the falling away where they created the Roman religion of Christianity and all that. But if you look at what happens next, hey, I'd have to dig more to find proof if I could or whatever, but you look at the Goths and the Vandals and the Huns and the Heruli. I would bet that somehow the Roman bishops incited these people to attack Rome to help remove power from the Roman emperors because they wanted to take control, right? I don't have that proof. I'm just saying I could see that happening because what will happen next, you'll see in Trumpet 5. So think about these four armies came against the Roman Empire to reduce their power, and the fourth trumpet with the Heruli, they took away the last Roman emperor who was the restrainer who allowed the popes of Rome to rise to power. So I'm just saying you can kind of see the setup. And then what happened? They rose to power in 538, and then shortly after they rose to power, they created the religion of Islam and propped up the illiterate Muhammad as their prophet. And then they led Muhammad and Islam to attack the Western Roman Empire, right, to go take more control of the Roman Empire for them. They didn't really have an army, so they're sitting there using these Muslims to go reduce the power of what's left of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And if you recall, the little horn of Daniel, the Roman Empire split in 476. It divided into 10 civil kingdoms, and the popes of Rome, the little horn of Daniel, rose up and demanded that they all be subject to him. And 3 of them said no. And so they were plucked out. And what's interesting about that is it's the Visigoths, right? It's the Vandals, and it's the Heruli, which are the very groups that attacked Rome. So it's those very groups that attacked Rome who were the 3 who were plucked out. And then you see, and so these Muslims no doubt helped with that overthrow of those people. And then they empowered the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, to go carry out their attack against Constantinople. And what's interesting about that is the split of Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church occurred in, I should know this, it's 1000 something. And now you have the Turks going to attack the Eastern Roman Empire. right? So the popes of Rome weren't happy that that they split and they created their own church, which was not subservient to the Pope. And now you have the sixth trumpet, right? The Turks going to attack the Eastern Roman Empire and kill many Orthodox Christians. So the point I'm making is you can see a case for the Roman popes causing these events to happen. And so the same thing's happening here with the Jesuits, right? They're seeking vengeance, and now they're going and they're judging. So they're carrying out the judgments against the Roman Catholic Church. It's the same narrative where the Roman Catholic Church caused the judgment of Rome. Now the Jesuits are causing the judgment of the Roman Catholic Church. And, you know, when you go to, we're in the sixth bowl, and you go to seventh bowl, and it's the one world government, and you see that the Roman Catholic Church is burned and destroyed and all that stuff, and that's going to be carried out by the Jesuits. So they're executing judgment against them. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yep.
So let's go through this verse by verse. And I'm just right on Revelation timeline decoded. The earth beat of Revelation 13 are the Jesuit Generals of Rome. Like I said, what I try to do with these studies is put a summary at the top. It kind of just gives, you know, for anybody coming to the study who won't read a verse-by-verse study, at least you get the summary. And they can reject it, or it'll cause something in them to go, okay, I need to read more. So it says...
Hey, and next Thursday y'all will be able to use your books. Hee hee.
Right, see? There you go.
Next Wednesday, sorry.
So the previous beast was the sea beast, and the sea represents water, represents people groups. And so it's telling you that it rose up out of a vast group of people. So it rose up out of the 10 divisions of the Roman Empire. This one's an earth beast. So it didn't rise up out of a great group of people, right? Ignatius Loyola created it. So it didn't come out of a great, it's like, you know, so if you invented a new group of people like the PPC, you know, we came out of the earth, right? So we didn't come out of anything. We didn't come out of a people group, right? We just came out of, our small group. And you look at the Jesuits now, and they're a great power. So they grew up into a great power, but they got empowered in the 16th century, you know, by the popes of Rome. So that was their beginning, but they started small. Good plug, Misty. Funny. So does that make sense of why it's an earth beast?
Yes.
Yep.
That also makes sense how it shows on it turns on the sea beast. I mean, they turn on each other all through history.
Right. So, I mean, the Jesuits from the beginning in the 16th century, they are the military order of the Vatican, and I won't go through it, but if you do a background on Loyola, I mean, he was a military kind of guy, and he wanted to go conquer, you know, be a great leader and a great military person, and he got hit by a cannonball, apparently, and it trashed his leg. So he was not able to continue with that pursuit. So I think he got pretty depressed or whatever, and went to seek spiritual counsel, if you will, and no doubt was encountered by the evil one to give him a vision of who he can be and what power he could have. And so he no doubt sought to control the world through other means, not through his military might, but by creating a military order. So they were empowered in the 16th century to counter the Reformation and to bring the Protestants back under the power of and the control of Rome. So that's their start, and they're the ones who carried out the Spanish Inquisition. They're the ones in the 16th century who created the false narrative of a future one-man Antichrist in a 7-year tribulation period. So you can already see the falseness of who they are. And just like in the sea beast, the Antichrist is not just one person, but it's a position. The false prophet is also a position. So, and it doesn't, you won't see false prophet in these verses. It's not going to say it. But when you look at Revelation, and it's talking about the beast and the false prophet will be captured and thrown into the pit, it's alluding to the false prophet. So it gives it a title. It just doesn't give it a title here. But throughout history, people have associated the false prophet with the earth beast of Revelation. Does that make sense? So the false prophet represents all the Jesuit generals, all the black popes who lead the Society of Satan. I call them that because they call themselves the Society of Jesus, and we'll get to the lamb-like features here in a sec. But so you have the white pope and you have the black pope. And the black pope is the Jesuit General. He controls the Vatican, but he does it in the background. He's not the front guy. He's not the guy out there speaking. You rarely see the black pope say anything, whereas all you see right now is Pope Francis. So he's the front guy. So when it says, I saw another beast coming up, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And you look at the Jesuits, and what do? Right? They act Christ-like, lamb-like, but they spread around the world, and they teach a false salvation message of following the 7 sacraments through the papal church. So they're false prophets. So they're spreading a false salvation message, and like I said, they're the ones who created. I don't know if there's background noise. Can you guys mute? I just keep hearing one noise in particular. So they're the ones who created the false prophecy, the future 70th week of Daniel, the one-man Antichrist, to deflect blame away from the Roman Church. So they're false prophets. They're teaching you. I mean, think about the irony. They're called false prophets, right? And they're the ones who created all the false prophecy. So everything that we have to counter, meaning the future 70th week of Daniel, 7-year tribulation, the future fulfillment of the seals, the trumpets, the bowls, all that stuff is from them. So they created it. So they are the false prophets from that regard, because first they're teaching the false salvation, so they're false prophets. Second, they're teaching false prophecy concepts that they've gotten to take hold into basically the whole church. So you can see how they're deserving of the name false prophet. So the verse continues, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon. So they called themselves the Society of Jesus. On the surface, I mean, this is how covert they are. On the surface, they appear to be priests. So because they're priests, countries allow them in because they're doing good work. They're doing volunteer work. They're helping people. They're serving people, all that stuff. Behind the scenes, though, what are they doing? Right? They're gathering intel. So what are they doing? They take the confessions of great men. Right? So they're in all these countries. The country leaders, the corporate leaders, the political leaders, all these people, if they're part of the Catholic Church, they come to these Jesuit priests and they confess their sins. So the Jesuits are gathering intel that they or someone else can use for bribery against those people, for intel of how to take control of those people. They find out who's pliable, meaning, if you can take confessions from someone and you see that they're pretty a bad person, you can invite them, whether it's not the priest that's going to do it, but the priest can have someone go invite them to become a part of whatever, whether it's Freemasonry or their society, to get them on their side, to carry out their orders.
Wow.
And if you guys have ever looked at the Jesuit Oath, and there's a link here on it, so you can just click on right here, and you'll go to BibleBelievers.org and the Jesuit Oath, the whole thing. But I think it's not a great read, but this is part of their oath to the Jesuit General. He says, I promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war secretly or openly against all heretics, Protestants and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate, I don't know how to say that word, obviously, and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth. I will secretly use the poison cup, the strangulation cord, the the steel of the poignard, don't know what that is, or a leaden bullet, regarded the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private. So he's swearing his allegiance to the superior general and to the Society of Jesus. Now, so we're looking at lamb-like, but dragon-like. This is the dragon-like part, right? So they wear black, they got the nice little priest uniform, they spread around doing good works, they do volunteer work and services, they do charity in countries. But what are they really about? This is what they're really about. Subverting the world under their authority. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell on it to worship the first beast whose deadly head wound was healed. So the first beast is the Pope. So the Jesuit General, the Black Pope, controls the Vatican, not the White Pope, which everyone sees, but they're using the authority of the Roman Catholic Church to draw the world under their power. So the Jesuits are empowered by Satan, and they're using America and all the different things to push the world into their one world government. But here's a picture of the current Black Pope and the White Pope. But you rarely see Adolfo Nicholas. Just once in a while he appears, but look at him.
So do Catholics know about the Black Pope? I mean, is that a secret, or is that
Great
openly
question.
known?
Great question. I don't know that answer. I assume they do, but they probably just think he's like another servant of the Pope, of the White Pope.
Yeah.
I never knew about it. Catholic, we never had any clue. We thought it was an order and a rank, and that was all there was to it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they always dress up like this. They don't dress up like the bishops and the cardinals, but they always pretty much dress in the black, just like that. And so, yeah, I don't think they really know, the whole secrets about it.
Yeah.
So it says, and he performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And, here, it's hard to totally know the fulfillment. I don't know if you guys have read through this. I started doing, when I did Islam and Bible prophecy, there's some there's a lot of things very similar to, between Mary and Fatima. And Fatima was the daughter of Muhammad. And they're using Fatima and Mary. They're using Fatima to connect Muslims to Mary. So they're basically marrying the two together, saying they're one in spirit. And so when I was doing my research, you look at this verse and you go, makes fire come down from heaven, on the earth in the sight of men, and you're looking at the Jesuits basically doing this. And so in 1917, the Jesuits actually caused an event where 70,000 witnesses supposedly saw the sun, right, contrary to the laws and, cosmic laws and normal, sun actions. They saw it twirl in the sky, throw off colors, and descend to earth. And this event occurred in Fatima, Portugal, right? So look how staged this is, right? So Fatima is the daughter of Muhammad, so she's one of the revered ones. Mary and Fatima are the two highest revered women in Islam. And so here in Fatima, Portugal, of all places, all these people saw this and caused even non-believers to immediately drop onto their knees and beg for forgiveness, right? And it's called the miracle of the sun. And it confirmed the validity of the message of Fatima, which was a message from the Virgin Mary, which supposedly, and it's a 100-year message, which is fascinating. So it's 1917, and the 100-year, so it's a prophecy about 100 years, and you guys can look up exactly that message of Fatima or the miracle of the sun, and you'll find it. But it's a 100-year prophecy, basically. She was given a 100-year warning that y'all need to come under, Mary's directions. You need to follow Mary's orders, or else there's going to be future calamity, right? Well, 2017 is the 100-year mark. So should be interesting. But what it is, it served to draw the Muslim community towards the Roman Catholic Church as they revere Mary, and they believe that she was speaking through Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. So I don't know. I mean, that's a real event that really happened. Whether that's what prophecies talk about, fire coming out of the sky. I mean, some people actually speculate that. Okay, you're in Fatima, Portugal, and they haven't seen anything. And some people speculate that it was like a blimp, an illuminated blimp acting like the sun. So you have this illuminated blimp acting like the sun coming down, and apparently there was a vision of a woman in the blimp, and who knows what they did. But they're the deceivers. So like I said, you guys can look those two phrases up on Google, and you can find that whole narrative of what they're doing. Or it could point to some future event, whether they're using HARP, whether they're using whatever satellites in the sky or whatever to cause fire to come down from the heavens. I don't know. Or it could be, several times the lightning hit the Vatican. Didn't it hit the Vatican? Let's see. When Pope Francis was elected, is that right?
Twice.
Yeah. So
He had to hit it twice.
Yeah. So fire comes down from heaven in the sight of men. Was that it? So who? I don't know. It's not a huge point, but you just try to look at history and figure it out. It says he, again, the Jesuit General, the false prophet, deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do on the side of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. So, since 1798, when the Jesuits took control of the Roman Catholic Church, they basically have created an image of what it used to be. In the 12th century, in the 13th century, the Roman Catholic Church was at the height of power. They controlled the kings of the world. They were pretty close. I mean, they were gaining momentum. They were close to controlling, that whole section of the world. And then that just kind of led, towards the Protestant Reformation. And they lost a lot of that power. And they lost a lot of that control. And since the Protestant Reformation, they kind of fell. Their power has declined. So the Jesuits are trying to get that power back. They're using the same model. They know the model works. They know, they see all the things that have worked, and they're going to try to use that model again. So basically, they've propped up the Roman Catholic Church, creating an image of what it used to be. It's not the real beast, which was the popes of Rome being in power and them having civil and ecclesiastic power, but it's an image of it. It looks just like it. It acts just like it. Kind of, Pope Francis is changing things up a little bit now, but it's just, so it looks like the beast, and they're gathering the world under its power. But what's interesting is it says, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. So you say an image to the beast. So an image, the beast was a church state. So a beast was, had church, ecclesiastic powers and civil powers. But the civil powers of the popes got removed in 1798. But then in 1929, at the Lateran Treaty, the Jesuits caused the leaders of Italy to establish Vatican City as an independent state, giving her civil power again. So now you have a church state again. Now you have something that looks exactly like the Roman Empire did. So the beast is Roman. It's always Roman. And the Roman Empire, the Roman emperor had... It was a different kind of beast. Like Daniel talked about, Daniel 7 said it was a different kind of beast. And it was a church state. It meant that the leader was the leader of the civil power and the ecclesiastic power. And that was duplicated in the popes of Rome. And now here you go in 1929, the Jesuits reestablished that, giving it civil power again. And of course, they have ecclesiastic power as they control the religious leaders of the world. So as far as I can see, that's, what it's talking about, is making an image to the beast. Does that make sense to you guys, or do you have any other insight?
No.
That makes sense.
So in Pope Francis, what's interesting about the time we live in is, they basically have positioned pope after pope after pope who have bowed to their authority, carried out their orders, all that stuff, but they were just different popes. Then maybe they had influence with, they trained and all that stuff, but they just positioned them there and told them what to do. But in Pope Francis, he's a Jesuit. So now they've taken the white pope place. I'm not saying he's the black pope. I'm just saying that, here's a person who's Jesuit trained. He's a true Jesuit, and he is in the position of power. And what's he doing? He's gathering Protestants, Orthodox Church, Muslims, the whole world under their power, exactly like they want. And they're causing the whole world to worship the beast. And worship the beast doesn't have to be their you're bowing down and you're worshiping, you're even proclaiming it as God. That's not what the text is saying. It's saying when you revere it, when you give it authority, when you believe in it, you're basically worshiping the beast or giving it reverence. So they've created an image of the beast. They have created a power structure in the form of the Catholic Church, which they revived, and they're using it to gather everything under their control, which we see every day. Pope Francis just met with the Orthodox Church recently, trying to reconcile that gap that's been there since whatever 1050 or whatever, or 1027. So he's drawing everybody back to him, just as planned. Now, again, it's another thing. It says, telling those on earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword. So maybe this is the answer, or, I'm not saying I know everything. It could refer to a future deception. It could be just like Nebuchadnezzar had the image made and people were supposed to bow down to it. And maybe the Jesuits, used Project Bluebeam to create a holographic image in the sky, with a message from God in different languages and all that stuff. And everybody's supposed to bow down to it or worship it, whatever. Some of these things we don't know quite yet. So it says, and he granted power to give breath to the image of the beast. The image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed, which is fascinating. So you can just, here's how I'll explain how I look at it. You look at recent history, and I just added this, so this isn't on your reports or whatever, because it's ever evolving. But look at recent history. What's it saying? That if you don't reverence the popes, if you don't revere the popes, you'll be killed, right? So look at what's happening in history, right? They demonized Saddam Hussein. What do Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, President Assad, and Iran have in common? They didn't have, the two previous ones, Saddam and Muammar, didn't have a Rothschild central bank. They didn't bow down to the authority of the Jesuit Rothschilds. So they demonized them to justify military action to kill them, right? Because they would not worship the image of the beast. They would not revere the popes of Rome. They would not revere the Jesuits. And guess who's dead? Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi. And so I'm just saying that we know this is a true fulfillment of what they're doing, whether it's fulfilling that verse or not, or it's the first part of that verse that they're, causing countries to bow down to the image of the beast, basically, to revere the popes and to bow down to the authority of the Jesuits. That's what they're doing in Syria right now, and that's what they're doing in Iran. Because here's the point. In order for them to control the whole world, they have to control the money supply of every country. So in order to dictate, right, who buys and sells, they have to control the money supply. So if we're going to go with the narrative, that no one can buy and sell except him who has the mark of the beast, well, if you're going to be the person, the entity that's going to enforce that, then you have to control the financial system of who can buy and sell. And so that's exactly what they're doing. Now they control the money supply of Iraq. Now they control the money supply of Libya. That's what they're trying to do in Syria with President Assad, is overthrow him so they can have a central bank there, and they'll do the same with Iran. So they're taking the control of the money supply.
And each one of these countries you just spoke about also did something else. They threatened the established globalists to buy oil in euros.
Right. Yeah, and we'll get into that here a little bit. Because yeah, you're exactly right. Muammar Gaddafi tried to create a gold type currency. He was actually a really good guy, and if
Yes.
you look at it, I mean, he supplied, he gave credits for, he supported people in that country. You know, gave them, well, first of all, he did huge things as far as just getting clean water into that area. He gave people when they got married, he gave them financial support incentive. When they had kids, he gave them financial support incentive. If you were going to be a farmer and raise produce for the country, gave you financial incentive. Education. I mean, there was just so many incentives that he had built in, and here's what he was doing, which is what every country should be doing, is taking the money from oil, which Libya had, and funding the country. What a concept, huh? So,
Yes.
so you take your natural resource and you sell that oil, and then you fund your government, just like Saddam Hussein did. That's exactly what Saddam Hussein did. Is he was trading oil for not U.S. dollars, and he was funding the government with oil profits. That's what every country should do, but they can't control you, so they get rid of you. So yeah, you're exactly right. They were trying to create alternative ways to trade except using U.S. dollars, and so they got taken out. So that's why you see President Assad being attacked this year. Not because he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's an angel. I'm just saying it's not a bad guy. It's just they got to get rid of him to take control of that country.
Mm-hmm.
So verse 16, it says, he caused all, both great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on the right hand or on their foreheads. And you really look, I mean, 1/6 of the world's population is Catholic. Do they not have the mark of the beast on them? We just saw on Wednesday, right? They all get the cross on their head. They got the mark of the beast right on them. Why? Because they obey the commands of the Pope, because they revere him. They trust him for salvation. You know, now you have Protestant churches, you know, Orthodox churches, you know, Muslims gathering along. So, you know, he's drawing everybody under their power. So the mark of the beast, I don't know if we'll do a study on it or not, but on Revelation 14 of the study series, there's 2 applications of the mark of the beast. And so there's the mark of the beast right there. And so the mark of the beast, the first application of the mark of the beast was in Revelation 14. And that's referring to the people in France and Spain who obeyed the Pope's commands to kill the Protestants, right? During the, 16th, 17th centuries, in the 18th centuries, they were killing the Protestants, and they were wiping them out, like France. It was 50-50 split between Protestants and Catholics, and the Catholics in France obeyed the orders of the Pope and either killed all the Protestants or drove them out of the country. You know, Spanish Inquisition, same thing. So all these different countries were killing the saints. They had the mark of the beast on them. And so the judgment carried out because they had the mark of the beast was the bowl judgments. So those countries who had the mark of the beast on them got judged. France, French Revolution, Spain, through Napoleonic Wars, and all those other countries who had killed the saints, they already got judgment against them in the bowl judgments because they had the mark of the beast. So the mark of the beast, you know, is not itself, in and itself, a tattoo or an RFID chip. The mark of the beast is revering the Pope. That's the mark on your forehead. And the right hand is your actions. Are you obeying the Pope? And I don't know how far, you know, I don't know if there's a one application of this. So what that means is when the one world government forms, will they make an ultimatum? Probably, right? If you're, so you look at the narrative, so they're going to cause the mark of the beast, all this stuff, and you can't buy or sell except, you know, you have the mark of the beast. So, you know, in the one world government, they're probably going to say, you know, you're either with us or you're against us. You're either part of the system and you're going to bow to our authority. You know, but let me back up. They're going to create a situation after World War III where they're going to cause Muslim countries to attack Israel. So you're going to have a huge religious war that's going to wipe out a great group of people, and the world's going to cry out for a solution to that problem. Let's have no more religious killing. At the same time, they're going to have, no doubt there's going to be a worldwide economic collapse. So now people are going to be seeking water, food, shelter, medical care, all those things. So now you set up the whole narrative so people are desperate and crying out for a savior, for a people group to save them, and who's going to step in? Of course, it's the people with all the gold and all the money. It's the Jesuits. And so they probably will deliver an ultimatum and say, okay, you know, and you know what's interesting is you see on Facebook, you see the Illuminati group. They have an Illuminati group, and I ordered their book, The First Testament of the Illuminati or whatever. And if you read that book, you see that the Illuminati, which is the Jesuits, but they're not saying that, they say, we see what's going on. And if you read that book, they say, we know what's going on, and we know the direction this world is taking, and we're doing things in the background to protect you, and we're doing things in the background to be able to help you in the future.
Right.
So that's what their New Testament. I ordered it. I mean, of course I'm going to read that because I want to know what they're going to say, because that's the enemy. So they're already
Right. That's what they're preaching.
Yeah, so that's what they're already positioning themselves as being the savior of the world. And that's what they're going to do. In the one world government, they're going to go, okay, you know what? We've been preparing for this day. We knew it was going to happen. You know, we just couldn't do anything about it. But here's our solution. But in order for you to benefit from our system, you're going to have to agree to our terms. You're going to have to bow to our authority. And so that, you know, may very well be the dictate. But ultimately, it's going to come down to you are, you know, saying the mark of the beast. The beast is the Pope. So it's just telling you, I mean, this whole narrative is telling you that the false prophet, the Jesuits, are causing you to revere the Pope, and the Pope is the beast. So it's going to come down to the fact that you are going to have the mark of the beast. You're going to revere the beast, and you're going to the Pope, and you're going to obey the Pope, or you're not. That's the bottom line. And so if you do obey the Pope, okay, then maybe you're going to get a chip. Okay, maybe you're going to get a tattoo if you do. But the chip and the tattoo are not the mark of the beast. Okay, they're the result of you obeying the popes of Rome. They're the result of you having the mark on you, which is a symbolic mark. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So, you know, I don't want, you know, people, if you didn't obey the popes and someone slipped a chip in your arm, you're not condemned. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's all about obedience. It's all about, you know, having the wisdom to know who the beast is. And, you know, and what's interesting is you look at, they control the World Bank, they control the International Monetary Fund, the International Bank of Settlements, the Federal Reserve, the central banks in almost every country. So they'll control who buys and sells. What's interesting is a lot of people are out there blaming the Jews for everything, okay? And the Zionists, or the Jesuits, have used the Zionist Jews to control many areas of finances. So they do control Goldman Sachs, and they control, you know, there's been a lot of Jewish Federal Reserve chairmen and all that stuff. So there's a lot of Jews in this whole mix. But the reason they do that is to use them as a front organization of sorts. So people will blame the Jews. Oh, look at those Jews stealing our money. Oh, look at those Jews doing this and this and this and this. So the whole world, like Tex Mars, who I used to learn a lot from, I've listened to a lot of audios and videos from Tex. Here's the problem with Tex. Tex is always blaming the Jews, 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 Jews. And guess what? It's not the Jews totally. So are they guilty? Yes. Are some of the leaders guilty? Absolutely. But they're not the top of the pyramid. And he's not doing enough to point to the top of the pyramid, and that's the fallacy in, with him and other people like Brother Nathaniel. So Brother Nathaniel is here in Colorado. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but
No.
he was a Jew, and he supposedly converted, you know, to Christianity, but he's an Orthodox Christian. And he does all sorts of videos about, you know, oh, the Jews this, Jews this, Jews this. Well, he's just a front guy. So his job, his role is basically just to point to the Jews because they're the bad, they're the beast, they're everything. And they're just a front organization. So don't let people So the Jews are guilty, but they're being used by the Jesuits, and they're the fall guy. Then you get to the last verse of the passage. It says, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man." His number is 666. And it's really almost as simple as the narrative. There's a couple of different approaches. Different people have said different explanations, and I'll show that. But Vicar of Christ in Latin is Vicarius Filii, I guess, Filii Dei, which equates numerically to the number 666. So now that I queued that up, I can queue up the rest of this. So, and I'll add to that. So if you back up, so what I did, and you guys can, and I'll apologize for this ahead of time because you guys are going to receive your Revelation Timeline Decoded books, and they're not going to include some of this information. So here's what I'm going to tell you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I know.
Get that back to the publisher.
That's just always the way it is. So here's what it's going to be. Well, here's how it's working for me. These lessons that we're doing on the webinar are forcing me to do more research and add more information, right? Because my goal, what's in the book, is the explanation that I just went through with you, okay? And so this is what I will do for all you guys is that when the study series is done, we don't know when that'll be, but when it's done, I will get these printed up and ship you an updated copy, so you always have an updated copy. So you have the most important things, and that's the things I just went through. But here's what I want to show you, and you can do whatever you want. Yeah, I mean, you can just print one, this study right here if you want. You can just do print PDF and print the study. But what I've done is I went back through and I added some more authority, because here's the problem forever. I mean, it's just like with the last lesson. I can sit there and explain verse by verse, and I can explain things that seem to make sense, but people go, well, that's just your interpretation, right?
Right.
So what I did is I went through and I grabbed people like Coke's commentary on the Bible. So when you're going through verse by verse, so then I saw another beast coming up from the earth. Well, here's Coke's commentary on the Bible. And he's going to tell you it's going to be another beast or the same power under another form. So he's going to tell you it's just like the popes of Rome under a different form that appears like a lamb with two horns, a symbol of dominion, temporal or spiritual. They pretend to be meek, but they have all the pride and rage of the old dragon and exercise the power of the first beast. That's the popes of Rome. And here's John Gill's explanation. And so you go through, same thing. So verse 12, and you guys can go through this, print this whenever you want, but here's, again, so verse 12, here's Coke's commentary on, he exercised the same authority, and so he's commenting. These are the two best guys that John Gill and Coke, talk about it. He holdeth imperium in imperio, an empire within an empire. And that's exactly what the Jesuits are. They rose up, one empire rose up out of another one, but they were created. And you just got John Gill's explanation. So I added these to it. You can read through when you get a chance. I would just print that one study, and you can just add it to it for now. But I'm not even done with this yet. But it just kind of helps you see a bigger picture, from these two great theologians. I mean, look what he's saying. He's talking about the signs and everything he would do to deceive people. And he's just going through and talking about the two-horned beast, the corrupt clergy. And that's exactly who the Jesuits are, corrupt clergy. They're a representation of the Roman Empire. So anyways, you guys can go through that. Sorry, Misty.
Corrupt clergy. You guys are spot on.
Well, what's interesting, too, is you go back through, and this talks about, and that's why I love these guys for the value that they bring, that I learn from them. So this is talking about no one being able to buy and sell, and here's John Gill explaining that there's a previous precedent for the popes at their councils and synods, the Lateran Council under Pope Alexander, to decree against the Waldenses and the Albigenses. Albigenses. That's so hard to say. Those were before the Protestant Reformation. That people group, right? So those are two witnesses, part of the two witnesses, and they were the Church of Thyatira, and they were protesting. They were witnessing against the popes of Rome. And so Pope Alexander, basically said that you will not buy and trade with them, right? And then in a different one, Pope Martin V said that no one should contract with these people. So basically, nobody should trade with them. So back then, you're in a society where everybody has a small business, and it's all barter, and it's all, you're bartering everything you're buying and selling, and he forbid that. So it kind of gets into, more details about there's a history, there's a precedent for the Roman Church doing that. So like I said, you guys can go through that. This is in your study right here. I think this is endlessly fascinating. So these guys wrote as far back as the 5th century.
Please enter your access form.
All right. So these guys wrote in the 5th century. So Andreas, Bishop of Caesarea. Yeah. Expositor in the Greek Church during the latter part of the 5th century. Explains that Irenaeus, the two-horned beast, is Antichrist false prophet, exhibiting a show of piety with pretense being a lamb when in fact a wolf. That's a Jesuit, right? This one's talking about, let's see, this one says, hypocritically feigning likeness to the lamb in order to better war against him, and by the mask of a Christian profession, under which mask the devil puts himself before men, acting out the mediator. So he's telling you they're going to feign to be a priest in order to better war against them. In order to, so they're going to fake to be priests. They're going to spread around the country so they can war against the Messiah all the better. Bede wrote, he shows the horns of a lamb that he may secretly introduce the person of the dragon. I mean, then that's exactly what they do. That's exactly, so they're not, they don't know who the Jesuits are, but that's what they're saying. And he's saying exactly what Messiah said, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. That's the Jesuits right there, right? Ambrose, signifying the preachers and ministers of Antichrist. Signifying the preachers and ministers of Antichrist. Antichrist is the Pope. And who did the Pope empower to be their military? The Jesuits. Feigning the Lamb in order to carry out their hostility against the Lamb, just as Antichrist too, the first beast head, wounded to death, would, he says, exhibit himself pro-Christo in Christ's place. I think those are amazing, dating back that far. Those people in the 8th century,
Yeah.
5th century speaking about what they saw would be, I mean, especially when you say they're the preachers and ministers of Antichrist. That's the Jesuits. I mean, you look at them, that's exactly who they are. They are the preachers and ministers of the popes of Rome, who spread around as lambs but carry out hostility towards Messiah. So on the bottom here is a great video. I do list references, so these are the people I reference the most, and then there's additional resources. You can click on this link and go through the article called The Most Powerful Man in the World, the Black Pope. And then there's books you can read, Rulers of Evil, The Secret History of the Jesuits, Code Word Babylon. It's an awesome book. I'm still reading through this right here. It just explains the whole background of who the Jesuits are. So does the verse by verse make sense? Does it make sense that it is in fact the Jesuits?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely.
And the thing is so, I mean, that again, that's the verse by verse explanation. And kind of like with the popes of Rome did the verse by verse explanation, but then you can point to all the other things. That was the Revelation 13 verse by verse, but then the little horn points to them, the son of perdition points to them, prophecy points to them with the trumpet and the bowls and everything. So it's the same thing here. You just kind of look at how history unveils prophecy. You can see how they fulfill prophecy, where we're at right now. So you kind of look at the sixth bowl, where we're at right now, and you can look at the bowl judgments and see that the Jesuits are, in fact, active in carrying out this judgment of the Roman Catholic Church, and they're not done yet. The seventh bowl will carry out the final act against the Roman Catholic Church, but they've carried out these previous seven. But what you can see is their active role. So like where we're at right now, in the bowl, it says that there's 3 unclean spirits, and that's Satan and the beast, the Antichrist popes, and the false prophet, the Jesuit Generals. And it's them causing 3 world wars. So we're waiting on World War III, and you can see the Jesuits positioning that right now. The Jesuits control Saudi Arabia. The Jesuits control most of the major Muslim countries, and the Jesuits control Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the CIA and Mossad and all those things. So they're going to manipulate, the situation again like they did with the first 2 world wars to cause the Muslim countries to attack. So we can see how the Jesuits have their hand in that. We see it
now.
Yeah, and so we see in the seventh bowl where it talks about the greatest earthquake ever. So it's talking about the greatest political upheaval ever, and that's the formation of the one world government. We see that it tells us about the split, that the great city is going to be, so the great city is it's pointing to Rome, but it's symbolic of the Roman influence, and so it says the great city is going to be split into 3 parts. And that's the city-state of the Vatican that controls the world's political and ecclesiastic leaders. That's the city-state of London, which controls the world's financial and trade organizations. And that's the city-state of the District of Columbia, which controls the intelligence agencies and the militaries of the world. So right there, once again, in the future bowl, we see the Jesuits' influence, because I think we've all seen the graph where we see the 3 city-states that they control. All those point directly to the Jesuits. So we can once again see a confirmation that in fact the Jesuits are the one who have power. And if you look at Revelation 18, if you read through the narrative of Revelation, which bring it on, it's the judgment. It's the judgment of the whore. You can see, and it's talking about the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her. When she is desolated, they're going to stand back and they're going to weep and wail, and it just kind of gets into the description of, John's describing it as best as he can. He's basically saying the people that have been made rich by her are going to weep and wail because she's going to get destroyed. And, he's talking about the things he knows. The things of trade, basically, is all he's pointing to. So all the things that are traded in the market, and he says, and the souls and slaves and souls of men, which, again, the city of London trades you and me.
Yes.
By our corporate entity, they trade us on the market. We are a corporate entity that's traded, bought and sold. They are in human slavery. They sell human beings. Goodness knows what they do, but they're in charge of that. So it's, once again, it's pointing to the Jesuits who control that city-state. And here it's pointing to the great city of Rome. So it says, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, so pointing back to the Roman Catholic Church, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. So it's basically telling you it's going to be desolated, and it's once again pointing to the control of the Jesuits who, anymore in this world, look at who's rich. Look at who became rich. Look at the Bush families. Look at all the Rothschild families, the Rockefeller families. Look at the kings of the earth. This is exactly who it's talking about. We look at these names, we know these names, and it's talking about these kings that have become wealthy because of her, because of the Jesuits. Well, that's them, kings of the earth. That's the Rothschilds. That's the Jesuits. That's the Bushes. That's all these different families who are the kings of the earth, who are getting rich because of her, because they serve her purposes. And they deceive, by sorcery and you read through the bottom of this, it says, the light of the candle shall shine no more in her. It says, for thy merchants were the great men of earth, and by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And they are using sorcery throughout. And well, let me ask if you guys have questions about that part first of all, and then we'll go into another short part.
Well, but we have examples, a couple in Scripture of what you were talking about earlier. You know, they are Babylonian, and Babylon is the one that put the boys in the furnace.
Right. Well, they're just, I mean, yeah, that's why John marveled. I mean, John marveled. It's mystery, Babylon the Great. And John marveled, and he had to get more clarification because he was just probably in so and on. I mean, basically, it's the Babylonian religion under the guise of Scripture.
Yes.
That's all it is. So that's what the Roman Catholic Church is. It's the Babylonian religion of sun worship and Satan worship under the guise of priest, right? Of a pseudo, Christ. And so he was in awe of that. And under that mask, under that banner, if you will, they're guilty of the blood of the saints. John had to just be like, what? Tell me again.
Babylon.
Tell me again. So this is, I'm just going to scan through this, and you guys probably know some of this, but I'm just going to scan through this. This is actually one of my projects. I added to the list. And it's not, so in this lower section down here, it says, because you can explain everything, all that, but how did they take control? And so how did the Jesuits take control? So one of the studies is how the Jesuits took control of America, because people, again, say America is the earth beast of Revelation. Well, the Jesuits control America, so though America might act like the reigning power, it's really the Jesuits behind us who cause us to do all that we do. And so, and this is a document. This is how I work, by the way. So everything goes in a Word document. Once I get it good enough and I can section it out, then I start putting it into a study, and then it just ends up, in order, but then I have to finalize it and stuff. So what's interesting is before 1776, 95% of America was Protestant. And they came here, we're told, they came here to escape the taxes of the king and all that stuff. Well, fine. But the real reason they came here is because they were being persecuted by the Jesuits during the Inquisition and stuff like that. So they were fleeing away from the Jesuits. That's why they came here. So, and before this country was founded, because they still had, governmental kind of, bodies and stuff like that, Catholics were forbidden to vote or to practice their Babylonian Mass. Right? That's America. Yeah. That's what we're founded on. And here's the fascinating part. Is you look at the First Amendment, and that's from the Jesuits. And what's the First Amendment? So what is the First Amendment?
Freedom of religion.
Yeah, Congress will make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, blah, blah, blah. But the first part is the one I'm pointing to, right? Why did they do that? 95% of America is Protestant. Do we really need a law saying that we can practice our Christianity? No. So what's the circumstance? The circumstance is Catholics aren't allowed to vote or practice their Babylonian Mass, and they weren't allowed to hold office. Okay. So now the Jesuits get the First Amendment passed, and guess what that just did? It just gave them religious freedom.
Build a church.
Yeah, so now the Catholics can come build their churches, and now the Catholics can hold office, and now the Catholics can build
their church. Wow.
So now they can build schools. That's what Jesuits are famous for, and you'll see that in a sec. But so they did it for their freedom. They do that. They've done that several times. Things they say, oh, it's for this reason, and it's really for this reason over here, because the victors in a battle get to define history. Okay? So there's the real history, But if you're the victor, if you're the dominant party in a country and you took control of the country, you get to rewrite history according to how you want the kids to learn history. Okay, so they didn't escape, from taxes, or they weren't coming here to escape taxes. They were coming here to escape the Jesuits. So that's the real history. Oh, and you can go through a history, and I'm still putting all this together, but Daniel Carroll. So the Carroll brothers are just, so the Jesuits were part of America from the very beginning. And that was mainly through the Carroll brothers, or two Carroll brothers and one cousin. And so he was part of, Daniel Carroll, I think I have all these names right, was part of a appointed committee to find a suitable location for the capital city. He's actually one of the people to sign the Articles of Confederation and all that. He was Jesuit trained, turns out, at the College of St. Omer, right? Him and his brother, I think it's, he says John, so his brother's John. So they were Jesuit trained. So here they come. The property that became the capital site was inscribed in the Maryland property record as, it was called, what?
Rome.
And the owner was his name was what? Francis Pope. Can't make this stuff up, kids. I don't know how this all works out, but it does. So the southern boundary of the property that ran through it was Tiber Creek, which points again to Rome, Italy, and the Tiber River. And there's 7 small hills around it, just like Rome. And now that Tiber Creek, it's called Rome it's basically, this place is called Rome on the Potomac now. So Washington, D.C. is called Rome on the Potomac. And here's the kicker. The land was partly located in Virginia and partly in Maryland. And when you combine those two terms, it reads, Virgin Maryland.
Oh, my God. My God.
You just can't even make up this twisted. I mean, they're so detailed in everything they do. So anyway, here's Rome, Maryland. It was part of a 10-mile square tract, which would become the capital. Daniel Carroll transferred the community to the federal government, after the amendment and all that stuff. Blah, blah, blah. So you just kind of get through. And I got to, one day when I'm bored, I'll go through this. But when you look at, if you guys have looked at the design of Washington, D.C., it's got all sorts of Masonic symbols and evil symbols. It's got a compass, it's got a pyramid, it's got a pentagram. There's all sorts of evil things in the design of Washington, D.C. So we were evil from the get-go. Oh, one thing I want to point out, which just stirred my thoughts, so I'll point it out. Because I just said we were evil from the get-go. So a lot of people point to a Revelation 13:11. They said it had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And what they'll make you think is we started out like a lamb, so we started out as a Christian country. So they're pointing to America. We started out as a Christian country, but then over the last 200 years, now we speak like a dragon. And here's what I'm going to tell you. This is verse 11. This is the first verse of the description of the beast. It is not telling you that it had 2 horns like a lamb, and then it spoke like a dragon. It's saying this is what it does, period. Right? Has 2 horns like a lamb, and it speaks like a dragon. It does both. It's not saying when it starts it's like a lamb, and when it ends it's like a dragon. It is not saying that. So just because I see it, people point to America and say, that's America. We started out innocent. Now we've gone downhill. Well, what I'm showing you here, with the satanic symbols in the Capitol, with the obelisk, Washington Monument is an obelisk symbol, which overshadows the Capitol building, which is a dome, all the Masonic symbols. We were evil from the get-go. Now we had a core of Christians, we had a core of Protestants, but I'm saying this country, the influence of the Jesuits was right there. John Carroll. Look at this guy's history, right? John Carroll, the brother of the other guy, joined the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, at the age of 18. And he was educated at St. Omer in France, right? And became a priest, Jesuit priest. He was the richest man in America in the late 1700s, became the first Catholic pope, presiding over the See of Baltimore. And he founded Jesuit Georgetown University, which now controls the United States, basically. So, who came from Georgetown University? Bill Clinton and a lot of really bad people. So they find people, they educate them there, they train them there to take control of this country. And so they created Jesuit Georgetown University, and they have so many universities. There's a whole list of universities they have in America to train people in the way they want them to think. And someday, like I said, I'll go through all this, and it talks about the dome. The dome was painted by Constantino Bromini. In his younger years, he became famous for his work at the Vatican. And now he's painting in Washington, D.C. Go figure, huh? So, let's see.
It's connected.
Oh, it's all connected, yeah. And so it's, you can go through whether it's Lady Liberty on top. She's basically the goddess of reason from the French Revolution. It's Ashura. She sits on a circular shape representing the earth. The inscription under it means "out of many, one." So I mean, even her on top of the dome is basically pointing to Rome, saying we control. And what's fascinating, and I don't have the picture, but Lady Liberty, if you look underneath of her, she has fasci symbols. Do you guys know what that is?
No, tell me.
Fasci symbols. I probably could have gone to Wikipedia. So, in this lovely picture with POTUS, this is a fasci. So right here, right here in our governmental building are two fasci. And so these are sticks bundled up together, got an axe on the top, and they basically show what they're telling you is they represent Roman authority.
Authority, yes.
That's in our government building right there, those two. So if you looked at, and look at that, fascist symbolism. Hello, right? Fasci. So there's the fasci. So you get the sticks, the bundles, the sword, and the fasci represented, passed on into ancient Rome, where it symbolized a magistrate's power and jurisdiction. Huh. You got to wonder what that's doing in our House of Representatives, huh? And so if you had, I don't know if I can, oops. Yes, I did mean that. Thank you. You're so helpful. Sorry, no, it shows a dog and a cat. That is awesome. All right, you fail. Let's go to Google. That is hilarious. It's so funny. It doesn't matter, but I just figured I'd show her if I could. But, oh, that's her. So, right.
Yeah, doesn't she mean destruction? Destruction from within. I think there's a...
I don't know if it's going to give me that image, but underneath, anyway, right there, so that's her on top of the Capitol building right there, and every one of these little things right here, that's a fasci symbol.
Yeah.
So what it's telling you, so there you go, you can see a better picture of it. So that's a fasci. Every one of those is a tied bundle, and it's a fasci symbol. So what it's telling you is Rome has authority here, and it's on top of the Capitol.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so lovely.
Wow.
Let's see, all that good stuff, blah, blah, blah. So,
Aren't you glad you guys are in Canada, Stacey?
No kidding.
I said, aren't you glad you guys are in Canada?
you guys are so much better, right? So you go back to their oath. So let's play this out. It says, I'll make war, secret, openly, against heretics, Protestants, as I'm directed. I will use the poison cup, strangulation cord, steal the poniard. I got to figure out what to steal the poniard. Maybe it's a sword, right? Poniard? Anyway, or the leaden bullet. So let's see that played out, right?
Yeah, that's got to be a sword.
So Samuel Morse, right, inventor of the telegraph. The Jesuits are a secret society, a sort of Masonic. So here's why I'm going through this. We see the verse by verse study. We see the prophecy, history unveils prophecy, kind of backing up, what we've learned verse by verse. But now let's just look at real life. Okay, let's just look at who is the evil ones that control the world. And so Samuel Morse, the Jesuits are a secret society, a sort of Masonic order with super added features of revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous, right? Marquis de Lafite So he was a American Continental Army. He served here in the Continental Army under Washington. In my opinion, that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priest, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars of Europe. Hello, right? John Adams wrote to Jefferson about the rebirth of the Jesuits. So basically kind of the rebirth, officially, was 18, and they took control in 1798, but there was, whatever, official rebirth, I guess, in 1814, or he wrote them in 1814, I guess, about that rebirth. He says, I do not like the resurrection of the Jesuits, so he knows about their background. They have a general now in Russia in correspondence with all this, shall we not have swarms of them here in as many disguises as only the king of gypsies I think I spelled that wrong in the thing, but can assume, if ever any congregation of men could merit eternal perdition on earth or in hell, it is this company of Loyola. Right? So that's what they're saying. Jefferson replied back, and he says, I disapprove of it too, for it is a means a step backward from light into darkness. And, I'll go through this, but here's the interesting part. So let's go back. Let's go back to this. I secretly will use the poison cup and the leaden bullet, regardless of honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person. Okay. Now let's just look at these two guys who obviously opposed the Jesuits, and let's look what happened to them. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Now this isn't probably in your history books because they don't want to advertise this. They both opposed the Holy Alliance of the Papal Church, the Jesuits. They both died on the same day, on July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And no autopsies were performed. They could have proved that they were poisoned. Does that sound really familiar to someone lately? Like
Yes.
Justice Scalia? Right?
Yeah.
So what are the odds?
Right.
What are the odds that two of our presidents who opposed the Jesuits would die on not just the same day, but July 4th, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence? What are the odds? Come on. Just can't make this up. President James Monroe died on, July 4th, 1831, 5 years later. What are the odds? Supposedly died from TB, but the symptoms are basically the same as arsenic poisoning. George Washington died suddenly when he took sick and then died 2.5 days later from poisoning by one of his 3 attending physicians. So you look at, the joke of this one is that he got a cold. He died from a cold because he didn't take off his wet clothes. That's what they said, right? But he survived the hardship of Valley Forge, but he didn't know how to take care of himself. Anyway, whatever. No autopsy was performed. That one's more hard to prove. But President Henry, we all just know about JFK and Lincoln. That's all we focus on. But look what's going on here that you don't learn in history. William Henry Harrison, elected on March 4th, served for only 35 days. Then he got sick, and he died. And he had defied the Jesuits in his inauguration speech. He defied their kings, said that no man should have that power. He opposed the annexation of Texas, which the Jesuits needed to push their slavery issue. John Tyler took his place, and all their agenda was pushed through. So he died in 35 days. Zachary Taylor served from March 1849 till his death in July of 1850, when he got violently sick on July 4th. Apparently he fought the poison for 5 days, avoided the curse of the 4th, but he died on the 9th. He had opposed the expansion of slavery and refused to sign a compromise which the Jesuits wanted. Fillmore took his place, and of course he did exactly what the Jesuits wanted. So you can kind of look at a history here and go, that's really suspicious stuff, right? If you don't follow our agenda, we take you out. And especially the ones that died on the 4th of July, which is very symbolic. So then you go to the Civil War. So they were involved in the foundation, and someday, I don't know. There's a lot of people teaching this stuff. The only reason I'm putting this together is because it just proves the point that they control America. But Lincoln said, so basically the goal of the Civil War was to bankrupt America. So it wasn't about slavery. They just made that the issue, like they always do. But it was about putting America into debt. And Lincoln said the war would have never been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. Lincoln's telling you this. So could have ended early, but they delayed it, and they caused the war to continue. So the hundreds of thousands of Protestants were killed in the southern states of Georgia, Carolinas. Because when you kill Protestants and you import lots of Catholics through immigration, what did you just do? You just shifted the balance of power, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you look at Lincoln, he had funded the war with greenbacks. That's why they're called greenbacks, because that's the money he did, and it was his own supply, but then they got bankrupt and everything. But look what he says. I have two great enemies, the Southern Army in front of me and the financial institutions in the rear. Of the two, the one in my rear is my greatest foe. He was assassinated later that year. He's pointing to the Jesuits. Okay. The right of the states, and therefore the citizens of those states, were killed in 1868 when the Jesuits had the 14th Amendment, one of the Reconstruction Amendments, ratified. So it was written under the guise to give rights to the former slaves following the American Civil War, because that's the narrative they say. But in reality, it created a new empire, one that serves the Jesuits. So before the amendment, people were citizens of their state, right? Or the United States. The state had power. State was sovereign. The federal government served the states. Now that they changed this, everything changed. Now everyone has a social security number. Now they're a U.S. citizen, not a state citizen, and they're controlled by the U.S. See how they flipped it?
Mm-hmm.
So part of the 14th Amendment says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States. They're saying the federal government rules supreme, and all the rights that were given in the Constitution are now just privileges that are taken away by the federal government. So before, federal government was the servant of the states, but now states are subservient to the national government, and the citizens are slaves to their new master. So they're manipulating everything, just like they did with the Patriot Act and all that. And then, so they bankrupted the country. The country's bankrupt. And so then they got the Act of 1871. And you can Google this. You'll find plenty of YouTube videos on it, whatever. But under no constitutional authority, because really to do this you would have to have a constitutional convention. And, they had no authority to do this, but they were in dire straits. And they created a separate form of government for the District of Columbia, in case anybody ever wondered why it's how does that ever make any sense, the District of Columbia? What? What's that? That's what I asked when I was a kid. Well, that's that 10-mile parcel of land. They created the city-state corporation of the capitals. You see, if you look at your Constitution, it's not capitals, it's capital U, right? Capital S, capital A, but it's not all capitals. What they did is they made a corporation that uses all capital letters with an altered version of the Constitution that's titled in the Constitution of the United States of America. So it's not the original Constitution, it's the new Constitution that's for this thing right here, which is the Jesuits Corporation. So the United States of America is founded by our forefathers, was bankrupt, and it was dead. And the United States of America, of the Jesuits, now controls America via their corporation, which is located in the District of Columbia.
Wow.
So, and you can, like I said, I'll get this someday. And you can look back. I mean, our forefathers of the faith kind of told us a lot of stuff. I mean, Garfield said, whoever controls the volume of money in our country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. And when you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled one way or the other by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate. Oh, wait, he was assassinated 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Right? Roosevelt, same thing. So Roosevelt said, behind our government sits enthroned an invisible government owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. To destroy the invisible government, to befoul the unholy alliance between corrupt business and politics is the first rank of a statesman today. And then there's the Titanic. This came up recently. The Titanic was sunk on purpose to get rid of the three richest people in America, basically, who opposed the establishment of the Federal Reserve. So they got Guggenheim, Strauss, who was head of Macy's department store, and John Jacob Astor. He was the wealthiest guy in America. They were all killed on the Titanic. They sunk it on purpose to get rid of their opposition. This is who they are. They control the Federal Reserve. You know, look how profound Thomas Jefferson is. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their money, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. We're not far away.
That's where we are, homeless.
We are not far away. And look what Rothschild said. Yeah. Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws. Okay, they control the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay. And then Woodrow, who signed the Federal Reserve Act, later said, I'm a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by a system of credit. We no longer have a government by free opinion, no longer a government of conviction and vote of the majority. This is in 18 whatever, or 19 whatever, but a government by the opinions and duress of a small group of dominant men. They're telling you. They're telling you. Well, Jesuits. Come on, man. Just went through that.
The Jesuits did it, but he was a Judas.
So I mean, and here's the other part. I mean, they control Bilderberger Group. They control the CIA. So the CIA was founded by William Casey, who was a Jesuit, right? So they created the CIA. And not William Casey, it was someone else. I forget his name. But the director of the CIA said, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false.
Oh.
So they created the CIA. I forget the guy's name. I thought I had it, but look at Madison. If tyranny and oppression come to this land, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy. Right? Isn't that what we're all about? ISIS? Right? Muslims, a foreign enemy, supposedly. So they control the Council of Foreign Relations. They control the Trilateral Commission. They caused the market crash. They created the IRS. They took out JFK because he opposed them. They control our American medical colleges, which controls our doctors, American Medical Association, all that stuff. So they control our education system. Yeah. I don't know how many Jesuit universities there are in America, but there's a ton of colleges and high schools that they're forming and shaping the minds of people.
Oh, yeah.
And they control the media. They control the minds. And then this list will kind of go through. I mean, look who's a Catholic. Look who's probably a Jesuit, right? Biden,
right.
Speaker of the House, former Speaker of the House, and the new one's a Catholic anyway, so it really doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Whatever his name is. Pelosi, she's a Catholic, right? And then you have like Secretary of Treasury, he was Jack Lew, he was Jesuit Georgetown University. You have the Supreme Court, right? Roberts, Roman Catholic. Scalia just got taken out. Look where he was from. He seemed like a good guy, but he was trained at Georgetown Jesuit University. So Clarence Thomas, look at that, Catholic. Anthony Kennedy, Catholic. Samuel Alito, Catholic. Sonia, Catholic. So they proclaim to be Christian, they proclaim to be conservative, but they're really Catholic. And then it just has a list of all the different things, as far as they control through the Knights of Malta, which is Bush, Chertoff, Clinton, all those people. So I won't bore you with all that, but I mean, that's something I'm working on that'll be a future study. So the point of the whole study is that's how they have taken control of America. So it's really not America who is great in power controlling the world. It's the Jesuits through America.
Right.